All right, guys, welcome to the next section of this Ozone 8 tutorial course. I'm Echo Soundworks, and in this video, we are going to be talking about the unique ways in which you can reference other tracks, other music in Ozone 8, as well as have Ozone 8 reference your own music, your own track, to create kind of a custom preset as a good starting place. So let's just dive in. All right, first things first, referencing music and referencing tracks is a great little mix hack, if you will, to have a good starting place, to have a guiding light, a guiding force, right? It could be as simple as just liking the low end on a track and then being like, I'm going to do whatever I want to do at the high end or the mids, right? Or it can be, how compressed it is, how tight everything sounds. It just gives you a place to start so you're not wandering around aimlessly in Ozone 8. Now, in previous versions of Ozone, you had to reference outside of the actual plugin. They have added a really useful reference tool. So I'm going to, let's X this out because I'm going to show you how this process works. So you hit the reference tab here and you can hit plus and this will add a reference. Now, I had to go buy Sound of Walking Away by Illenium because this track that we're listening to in this course it's a demo from our sound set Ashes, and I've since added some vocals to it for a upcoming product. So that's where this kind of comes from. Now, the track is, for the first half, it's like a really close carbon copy of Sound of Walking Away by Illenium featuring Curly. So this is an M4A. I just went and bought this off of iTunes. I know I should be using a wave for this, but I didn't have a wave. I could have converted it to a wave in iTunes and you guys would have been none the wiser, but whatever. It's still a good reference. I'm going to hit open. And then Ozone's going to do its thing. And the cool thing is this can handle many different formats. Wave, AIFF, MP3, M4A, etc. So it came up, here's the audio, and this is now our reference track. So now if I play, we now see two lines or spectrums here, right? I shouldn't say line. This is a really interesting line if it is that. And one is mine and one is Illenium Sound of Walking Away. Now, as I'm playing this, you'll see a little play bar right down here in Illenium. So it's at a different point in the song, right? So that's a little bit hard because I can't meter my track accurately if I'm in the drop and I'm trying to use Illenium's track as a reference and it's in the intro. So that's what these little tabs are for, these A and these B, right? So I'm going to go here and we're going to essentially you can set different markers. So now when I hit play, see, I clicked into the middle of this marker, just simply click and dragging. I can now find where I want the track to start. All right, so we're going to go back to the beginning of the track real quick. And if we hit I now and I hit spacebar, I've been quiet inside you, all my heart. We're now listening to Illenium Sound of Walking Away featuring Curly. So I'm going to go back a little bit further to kind of get this to match up. So now if I hit I again, it's back to my track. I didn't even hear you. I've been quiet inside you. I wasn't even looking. Oh, another way just to... All right, so obviously listening to a mastered track is going to be a little bit misleading because mine is purposefully quieter than my mix, right? I turn things down if you guys watched some of the previous videos. So we're going to turn down the gain, kind of do a manual gain match here. I've been quiet inside. I've been quiet inside. Oh, my heart. And instead of just, doing this aimlessly, what we can do is go to our I/O. I'm going to go to RMS and peak, and we're going to listen. I've been quiet inside you. Oh. Come back home, come focus. I've been quiet. All right, so that's pretty close in terms of loudness. So now I won't be automatically thinking Illenium's track is better, even though I like it more than this one overall, because my ears aren't being tricked by one track is louder and one's quieter. It's a lot closer. I didn't even hear you. Oh, my heart in my chair that you left. I wasn't even left to, but I've been quiet as All right, now you notice it just repeat that little section. So if I want to then compare like the build, and I can click up at the top to actually name them, right? Which is really helpful. We could have this, we'll have this called verse B essentially. Right, so that's kind of the chorus, and this is our chorus. So right off the bat, I'm noticing that my vocals are a lot less processed and a lot less compressed. And if that's something that is bugging me, or if it were at this stage, I would go back to the mix and, reference and try to get my mix if I was really referencing Sound of Walking Away's mix on the vocals. I'm not necessarily, because they're a little bit too crispy. I don't know, I have a certain flavor and style that I always drift to when I'm mixing vocals. It's a little bit more of like a Max Martin. I'm not saying it sounds as good as a Max Martin mix, but I drift towards, I'm trying to do that type of thing as opposed to more of the EDM. Kind of like sometimes some EDM tracks are just really sizzly on the top end, and I'm not personally a fan of it, but I do think the vocals in my mix could be more compressed, more processed, so I probably would go back and change it, but for this tutorial course, we'll keep trucking along. Now, this spectrum is really important because it's giving you a visual cue of, if your frequencies are the same. So let's go to the drop now in Illenium's track. So my drop's playing in the background, right? If I hit reference, it's playing at the same time. And it's actually crazy how close these are. And these aren't like matched, right? These aren't frequency matched. This is actually pretty cool. I'm pretty stoked about that, to be honest. It's really just a tempo difference. That's pretty cool. So this is basically saying let's say you're referencing a track and like, I really, really like the low end or the kick. Well, you're going to be focusing and looking at this area of the spectrum, or the high end. Now, I will say that there seems to be a little bit of kind of a sweeping tail here at the high end. That could be due to compression on Illenium's track because it's an M4A. It's not a WAV file, uncompressed audio, right? But so far, I'm pretty stoked with this. Now I'm gonna stop real quick while it's playing. You'll notice that I have a little peak, a little bit higher, so we're gonna want to address that, right? This is a great way to give you a starting point. Now, let's get off of the reference real quick, and in the same video, let's also check out the Master Assistant. So same type of thing. It's a reference, but instead of referencing another person's track, it's referencing your track. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reference it from 8 bars usually gets you there. So I'm going to do about bar 19 to about bar 28 to get a little bit of the build, a little bit of the drop. So I'm going to hit Master Assistant, and then Ozone is going to ask you, what are you going for? Streaming, CD, or reference? Well, let's just try it on streaming and see what happens real quick. So it wants you to play the audio. All right, and then I'm gonna hit accept. And now it's gonna do its thing. So remember before I said it, we had the EQ, dynamics, and maximizer up. Well, it's since turned off the dynamics. It's added dynamic EQ and it added a maximizer. So it was just reading, it's basically using the neutron technology where it's looking at your track and then applying a starting point. Now, I've done this a few times, and it might just be my mixes, I'm not sure. There's hardly any volume added.
I wasn't even looking. Oh, another way just to forget.
Right, I'm bypassing, and nothing's really happening. Now, also, I know I have some issues with stereo to mono compatibility. I've heard it by hitting this. Not so much here, but in the drop. So typically what I would do in that instance is I would use the imager. And I've not had a single time when I've used the Master Assistant Ozone actually slap on the imager. And I don't know why that is, but I think it's just more of a starting point for EQ, a little bit of dynamic range, and then maximizer in terms of not clipping, not necessarily adding a lot of volume. Now, like I said though, but a few minutes ago, this is a great starting point. It's basically a foundational preset. Now you can of course use any of the other presets. So let's go to genre specific mastering and let's do modern pop, hit close and see if this actually affected our sound.
I wasn't even looking.
Right, so that's a lot bigger of a change or difference.
Oh, another way just to forget. On my own once again.
All right, so I was just going back and forth between the reference. Now, I'm kind of torn between presets and the Master Assistant in Ozone. I don't like presets, and you guys, if you guys watch my videos, my tutorials, you know I don't like using mixing presets that much because for the beginner or as kind of an intermediate user, a producer, engineer, they can be a really dangerous thing. You can look at a preset and be like, okay, this is a male vocalist, I'm loading up a male vocal EQ, and it can make your vocal sound worse. And you might think, oh, that might be how it's supposed to sound. And the reason why presets with audio can be a little bit hard is because the audio doesn't necessarily take into consideration the kind of variables at play. How loud is the track? In this example, it's not taking into consideration the genre. It's not taking into consideration how much headroom I gave it. It's not taking into consideration a lot. Now, Ozone has gotten a lot closer to making the perfect kind of scenario for this. I think in the future, the process should be you Master Assistant, and then the Master Assistant applies that knowledge to all of the presets. Because remember, the Master Assistant preset barely changed our mix here, our master. It did pretty much nothing. It just would have stopped it from clipping, I feel like, if it was clipping, and turned down some of the low frequencies or the low mids for mud. Now, this modern pop, in comparison, so this was our Master Assistant. Wait, that wasn't the Master Assistant. Let me actually we'll do this one more time. We're going to go to Master Assistant, streaming. I'm going to hit next, and we're going to play. So I did that off screen real quick. So I'm going to copy this. Now let's go back to our modern pop. So here's our modern pop. And here's our assistant. So I personally like the modern pop one a lot more. It's actually doing something. That's why I'm saying it's not a perfect process yet. I think it should apply the knowledge that it gained from the Master Assistant to the actual presets, right? And maybe turn up the volume, turn up certain things. But that's probably pushing the boundaries of the software a little bit further. So I don't know, whatever works with your workflow best, I guess would start. I would suggest if you want to play it safe, the Master Assistant seems to be safe. I would say that 9 times out of 10, you're gonna be dialing back some of the parameters on the various presets. So let's go to the Master Assistant one more time, and let's let's actually have it look at the reference track. So you need to have the reference tracks loaded into your reference pane here for this to work first. So I'm going to hit reference. I'm going to hit sound of walking away. I'm going to hit next. And now I'm going to play.
That you left. I wasn't even looking. Oh, another way just to forget. To forget. On my own once again. Break it off, take me back. I was in the middle, but you pushed me to the other side. Come back home, come forget. Take it off, take me back.
All right, so it slammed the hell out of my track. You heard that. I turned it down as we were going. So let me turn this back to 0 decibels unity because that's what it should be at, because we gave ourselves headroom, right? Now, we matched it. We referenced it to Illenium's sound of walking away. So I'm going to hit play real quick.
I didn't even hear you. I didn't even notice that you left. That you left.
So really, it's just a threshold issue on the...
I wasn't even looking. Oh, another way just to forget. To forget.
on the maximizer here. Again, it only gave me these three: equalizer, dynamics, and maximizer. So let me listen to the reference real quick.
Back, I was in the middle, but you pushed me.
So yeah, the EQ helped in terms of matching the frequencies a little bit better, but the maximizer and everything else is just kind of killing the mix. It's just slamming mine to the point of...
Take me back. I was in the middle, but you pushed me to the other side. Walking away.
All right, so you get the idea. It's not a perfect process. So in the next video, we're going to start to master this thing from scratch. And as we're doing this, we're obviously going to learn all about the various modules. So just know that the Master Assistant and the reference tool are great tools, but you still probably should try to get under the hood, get your hands, I don't know the expression, a little bit dirty, and actually start to do these things yourself. I'll see you guys in the next video.